Thank you. Thank you. I'm humbled by the turnout. It's incredible to have this great crowd here. The thing that really fascinates me is the collective of minds, the like-minded individuals sharing ideas. And I'm especially enthused because what I have to share with you is not about metrics, which sounds like about as important or exciting as a party with a bunch of accountants, but stories. I feel fortunate to be able to, in this field, visit and work with a lot of different companies. And Bart mentioned I'm the director of the benchmarking practice at the Cutter Consortium. And the director of the Agile practice at Cutter is a fellow named Jim Highsmith, who is one of the co-signers of the manifesto, along with Ken and the other folks who started this whole thing. And I remember in the beginning, since I was a measurement or a quant guy, and Jim was talking about this Agile stuff, he said, metrics, we don't need no stinking metrics. You know, that's waterfall. And I said, well, how do you know if it's working? You know, you just can't say, oh, because we said so. Stakeholders aren't going to believe it, and you're not going to get buy-in, and it won't get off the ground among your executive team who write the checks for you to do this stuff. So we wound up having great, like CNN crossfire type debates at our conferences. But one day a company came and said to us, we really want to be able to show the business case for our executives because we want to do more of this. So we said, okay, peanut butter, chocolate, you got peanut butter, my chocolate, I got chocolate and your peanut butter, Agile and measurement, one great candy. So today I'm going to share with you some stories. It's not really metrics, it's really tales. And the blessing that I feel about being able to share this is I'm the storyteller. And I get to see certain things and patterns and how teams work, and you'll get to see that too. So I'm going to offer you a view through the lens that I share. So with that, it's also bits and pieces of some recent debates. I just came from Zurich, Switzerland, hobbling in with my cane. I'm not really that old, it's a tennis injury. But the debate in Zurich at the Software Engineering Technology Conference where I was asked to speak had to do with Agile versus offshore and the great debate that is. It's becoming the central issue. I think when the SEI was created and established the 5 maturity levels for software process maturity, it virtually opened the floodgates for American jobs to go overseas. And with this Agile movement, it's reclaiming technology and software innovation where it started, here in North America. So that's exciting to me. I mean, it feels like we now know more things today that we didn't know before about this whole business of creative, innovative knowledge work, which we call software. So let's get on with it, and I'll try not to hobble too much, and maybe stay in one place a little bit. When I was a kid, I was enthralled with the Apollo space missions, and I remember seeing this photo, which Dr. James Lovelock of NASA shared with the world, and a lot of people began thinking that little blue dot that we live on, it's not a dead rock, but it's this living entity. And a lot of folks think about the Gaia theory, that Earth itself is a living organism. And when I looked at, when I was born, I think there were about 3 million people in the world, and now there are about 6.5 million. And people speculate that the role of humanity on this beautiful blue dot is that it's the Earth's mind. Okay, that the Earth has a circulatory system with rivers and oceans. It has a pulse of a heartbeat as night goes into day. There are lungs like the Amazon rainforests that take in carbon dioxide and then release oxygen. And then there are these things called people. And people believe that, some believe, that the growth of humanity is the emergence of a global mind. And when we look at population curves like this, we see nothing happening for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and suddenly an explosion of humans. Interestingly, when you look at the number of atoms that make up a molecule, it's about 8 to 10 billion. It's about 8 to 10 billion molecules to make a cell, and it's about 8 to 10 billion cells to make a brain in an emerging fetus. When you look at the S-shaped curve of the explosion of brain cells between week 8 and week 13, when a baby is in the womb, you see a curve like this. It's a rapidly accelerating S-shaped curve, which at some point begins to taper off. But in the secondary stages of between weeks 8 and 13, a new phase begins, and the new phase is the interconnection of the cells by neurons, so that messages can be passed between parts of the brain and begin higher order brain function. There are some who believe that now that we're rapidly accelerating through 8 to 10, 6 billion people right now, probably taper off at anywhere from 8 to 10 billion people, that the next stage of the Earth's evolution is the interconnection of people on this Earth, which is certainly happening. I mean, the wiring of the planet with global fiber optics, the instant messaging. I mean, you could be sitting on a mountain in Nepal and share your thoughts with someone at the speed of light in North America with a text message. We're connecting people in smaller and progressively larger clusters where information is flowing. And the exciting, maybe mystical woo-woo part of this for me is my chosen profession is that this is all software. And hardware is the dumb box or the simple wires, the infrastructure through which information flows. And so that's what we're doing. We're building the information flow through the Earth's mind. So that's really what gave me a passion to study physics and engineering. My father wanted me to be a Wall Street trader, because that's what he was. In the 1970s, he said, back when banking and being a trader was a noble profession. You know, and he was amazing. He was an immigrant who escaped a war-torn nation in the 1940s and like the movie Pursuit of Happiness, just taught himself. So I had great admiration for him. But he was a quant guy. So I was a little kid watching him have all these charts out and all these graphs, and he was visual. And so he was able to instantly get the fundamentals of patterns for companies and their balance sheets, and that's how he made his decisions. I guess I kind of said, you know what, there's one part of that doesn't appeal to me, and that's the pulling your hair out part. So I said, Dad, I want to build stuff. I'm looking at rockets. I just, look at the stars, and I want to make things, right? So, and I still have hair. So one of the things I actually made, I became, I was on the strategic nuclear submarine program, which was interesting. And the software that we were building steered this 2 football field length nuclear submarine under the ocean, which under the ocean, it's actually a series of canyons and mountains. So you're flying a plane with no windows around mountains, and that's what the navigation software had to do. And I was on that project, and the exciting thing about that to me is it's really important to build defect-free code. Okay? And we said, okay. So we did things like test-driven development. And as a group leader for integration testing, I did all kinds of mapping from stories, which we called features or requirements, through tests, and designers wrote the code to those tests. And this thing operates beautifully, and for the longest time it kept its mission of keeping peace on this beautiful planet. This was what people truly believed the mission of this was. Because war was so deadly and awful from World War II, and my family were refugees from that there was a belief that we should never have that kind of global conflict again. And people felt that something like this would prevent or shield anyone from even thinking. Don't even think about it. Which is featured in the movie with Denzel Washington, Crimson Tide, Gene Hackman. And so I worked on the system that, they lost the antenna and couldn't get communication. So it was great. It was great fun. This is the vessel under construction at the shipyard in Connecticut. But eventually I got out of the submarine business and then wound up collecting data on software projects. So I want to share with you some ideas. A couple last images. The mentor, advisor, MIT professor who is my engineering mentor really when I was at Tufts, designed a Type T isolation truss, which when the Saturn V launched, it had to have a very stable platform as it sent people to the moon. And if you were off by 1/4 of an inch on launch, you missed the moon by miles. So this was fascinating to me, the kinds of things that we could do with this emergent science that I was getting involved in. This thing is big, 363 feet tall, 75 million pounds of thrust as it sends people. I don't know if you've ever seen a launch. I've been at Cape Canaveral and I've seen a launch of the shuttle at night. It's almost a spiritual experience, you know. And what creative folks like us can do with our talents and our innovation and our engineering. So this is the thing launching. And that's it for rocket stuff. So let's get into, because we're going to the moon, but we're here on Earth. Let's get into what I want to share with you about Agile. I love this. Ken was right. Using the word Agile was brilliant marketing, because if you're not Agile, you know, you're the guy on the left. And who wants to be the guy on the right? We all do, right? I will never get there. But anyway, the whole eloquence of the rhetoric was really what got things off the ground. But at some point, we needed proof. And so there was a guy a number of years ago, a congressman from the Midwest, Missouri, this is a proper pronunciation, who after hearing a previous congressman give a speech to all the representatives, just came up to the stand and basically said, "What a bunch of fluff. Frothy eloquence neither convinces nor satisfies me. I am from Missouri, and you've got to show me." So now the plates say the show me state on all the cars, right? And so Midwesterners are not gullible. And a lot of people aren't gullible. They don't feel they're gullible. That was the tone of this statement back at that time. And so let's look at what we're seeing among Agile and among Agile projects and Agile teams, because a lot of managers and stakeholders to whom you depend upon for buy-in also don't feel like they want to be seen as gullible. They want to hear you say, "Show me the data, show me the money." You know, show me the money, like the film Jerry Maguire, show me the money. So we started thinking about how we would, what we would find if we looked at data. And aside from being the benchmark practice director at Qatar, I'm a managing partner of a firm called QSM, which stands for Quantitative Software Management. And we've been collecting data for 20 some odd years now. And recently, Agile stats have been coming in. And so that's exciting because we could look right on the desktop of how Agile projects are performing. We can get essential measures which are verifiable. And if you believe some of the early prognostications, Kent Beck said one. He said, "How do we know if Agile works?" He said, "If we can build software faster with fewer defects," is one interesting way of framing it. So we shrink the time and we build clean code. You should be able to measure that. So if you're building an Agile release and you took 8 months, how long does it take for waterfall projects to build the same amount of software? All right, if you find this many bugs during your acceptance testing before you ship, is that more? Is that fewer? Is that right on the average? If you spend this much money and use a team of this many people, is that more? Is that less? Is it right on the average? So it's like the Goldilocks technique, right, of evaluating how we're doing in these dimensions. So the data that we've been collecting for some time doesn't just come from, fly-by-night companies. It's got some pretty impressive lists of the who's who of the Fortune 500. And patterns have been emerging, and we've been building benchmark trends for all of these dimensions for quite some time at QSM. And then people said, okay, the next cool thing here is Agile. So let's see how it performs. Now, fascinatingly to me, the whole theory of Agile is short feedback loops. versus long feedback loops, and reconciling the differences in people's minds for what people want to build,